The question is this. There's two questions, and we'll start with the first one. What was your overall vibe after you got a chance to look at the film? Because, again, you look at the result and you say, wow, Bailey Zappe hung in there with the Patriots on the road at Green Bay against one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and they almost pulled out a victory. But now that you got a chance to look at the film, how do you think Zappe actually performed relative to, again, what he was asked to do, the plays that he made, the plays that he could have made? Did he leave stuff on the table? What was your overall impression?
Yeah, so he was really thrust into a tough spot. Obviously, the circumstance of you don't really think you're going to play. He did get some practice reps before, but I'm sure he didn't think he was actually going to be going into the game. Obviously, an extremely tough environment against a future Hall of Fame passer. But on top of that, the Patriots were giving up a lot of pressure. Rashawn Gary, I think Isaiah Wynn's getting a lot of heat. It's deserved. I'm not going to say, get off the guy's back. Like,
Gary's damn good.
2 bad penalties. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Rashawn Gary's a very good player. They didn't give Isaiah Wynn help. Isaiah Wynn's usually not a guy who needs help. He for all that you say about him, he's not a guy who really gets beat very often, especially when he's pass blocking. But yeah, Rashawn Gary gave him a run for his money, and that was pretty fair. So besides that, I know Cole Strange, who had a very good day overall. He got knocked back once for a sack. Everybody had, other than Isaiah Wynn, he had a few losses. Everybody on the line had about one loss other than Mike Unwin, who's been fantastic. So Zappe was not only dealing with a tough circumstance, but he was under siege the entire game. Now, I thought he looked good on the play action passes, which were the only times the offense really looked functional. Obviously, the touchdown to Devontae Parker was a very good pass. It sucked up the defense. He had the clear out route. It was not the highest difficulty throw. Then he had another one to Aguilar, which, that was one where if you nitpick, if that ball hits Aguilar in stride, it's a touchdown.
He could get around that. Yep.
Exactly.
And,
now
he floated it, and it might have been some nerves there because he's like, oh, my God, he's wide open. I got to make sure I at least hit him. And so you really, you don't zip it. But, yeah, you're right. That was a touchdown.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, the guy was getting spooked. There were times where he had pressure in his face, and there was the one time where he did a 360 spin in the pocket that kind of reminded me of Jimmy Garoppolo, where you're like, all right, this kid is really, he's hanging on back there. So I think there were definitely plays that were left on the field. There were a couple crossing routes to Aguilar, also one to Hunter Henry that I thought could have been completed that he seemed to miss because of pressure rather than standing in the pocket. Which was a little different than what we saw in the preseason from him. Now, it was clearly a much lower level of difficulty, but at the same time, you saw him kind of handle pressure a lot better in those circumstances and make more downfield passes. And he just looked more consistent overall, which is partially encouraging because, again, much higher degree of difficulty when you're playing starters in the NFL. But at the same time, you at least see, okay, he can handle pressure appropriately. He doesn't make a lot of bad mistakes, which is the biggest thing right now. Although I would say his pocket presence was really bad at times. There were a couple sacks he took where he didn't seem to have any idea that there was anybody coming. And there were other times where he did feel pressure, and then he didn't really look confident in finding his escape hatch that the line was giving to him. He did a few times. He found his checkdowns. Most of his completions were either checkdowns or screens, which is partially, you want him to be confident. You don't want to give him a lot of high difficulty throws in that situation. But at the same time, it clearly hindered the offense. So you hope with the full week of practice, they can put together a plan that he specifically is comfortable with. When he gets the reps, he'll gain more confidence and know what it's like to throw to these different guys, what his strengths are relative to each receiver. So I would say not terribly encouraging watching the film back, just very honest. But he's also a 4th-round pick,
which is fine.
Like you said, shouldn't have been starting in the first place.
We're not grading on a curve, and it's not relative to expectations. We're now just simply saying, how did he do? Obviously, all of those caveats are true. But again, I think everything that he did could have been done by almost any quarterback. I think a lot of this was replacement level sort of stuff. And he didn't do anything necessarily to elevate or make any plays. But as you said, the most important thing is not make mistakes. However, the pocket presence, and I know that one sack, Wynn gets beat or someone got beat on a speed rush on the right side. And that's coming right at him. He's got to sense that. It's not a blindside hit. Didn't see it at all. Didn't feel it. Didn't step up in the pocket. So there definitely were some moments there. But again, you factor in the nerves and the week of prep. There's a million reasons for why. The question is there enough encouraging here? Because this is where we are now. It's the same Cam Newton, Jarrett Stidham situation. Nobody believed in Jarrett Stidham, but they all knew what Cam Newton can do, and they were all set with that. Let's see something new. What if the kids got lightning in a bottle sort of thing? That's what they want to see, the new thing. They want, they get it. Old and busted, new hotness. They want the new hotness. But who are they better with? If Brian Hoyer were able to play and had a full week of prep, and so did Bailey Zappe, who would you rather have in there for the Patriots? Let's say this MAC thing is longer than we think, 3 and 4 and 5 weeks, and Hoyer is available. Who are you rolling with?
I mean, Hoyer 100%. I will admit that when Mac first sustained his injury, I was kind of on the team of how long is it till we see Zappe? And I will completely admit that was a lot of PTSD from that Chiefs game in 2018 where, Hoyer made a lot of mistakes that you're thinking a veteran backup cannot be making. It's literally minimize mistakes, take care of the football, be mindful of the clock, all those things. We even saw Zappe, almost got called for consecutive delayed games. I think he got called for 2 anyway in the game.
Should have gotten called for another. Yeah.
Instead, he got his first career touchdown.
Yeah.
And was the first rookie to throw a touchdown. So, I would definitely prefer Hoyer. I thought Hoyer looked pretty good, especially there was that one play where he threw the angle route to Ramondre Stevenson out of the backfield where there was a deeper route to the left side to the 3 receivers where I thought he could have thrown it out, but he saw that there was going to be quick pressure inside and knew, all right, I got to get it out quickly. Not sure if that was his first read anyway, but you saw that Brian Hoyer has experience and, was very calm back there. And that's the difference. Honestly, when they signed Garrett Gilbert today, there was part of me that thought maybe Garrett's the one who plays just because he has started games before. He's been in the league a while. He has experience with the Patriots. Now, yes, they overhauled their offensive system. But at the same time, we've seen literal school teachers with experience in the NFL be called in from their classrooms to play games. And, at the end of the day, when you've been in the NFL long enough, especially in different systems, football's football. It's much easier to pick up the terminology, especially for the Patriots, I figure, who spent the entire offseason trying to streamline their terminology to make it easier for guys to pick up on. Yeah. And I my instinct was, yes, and so Brian Hoyer, I think, would be the better starter. And I think even if we see Zappe, if he shows those nerves early, if he makes some kind of turnover or one of those egregious plays early, we could see Gilbert. But, I would be more than happy to see Zappe, flip a switch, take command and, give you replacement level, but not replacement level for someone who is still adjusting to the NFL to a dramatic scale to what you saw against Green Bay.
No doubt. But see, here's the hang up with Hoyer. And this is where it's difficult. And again, we have a very small snapshot here on what you would expect with him as a starter because he played only a few minutes. But, the reality is this. Bailey Zappe would be lucky to have a career as good as Brian Hoyer's
absolutely
over the course of his thing. So I don't know. There's really not a ceiling associated with Zappe based on his physical profile, where he was drafted. I mean, historically, you're picked in that round as a quarterback. Chances are you're not even signing a second deal. That's the reality from that position. Doesn't mean there aren't success stories coming out of there, but it's difficult. And there's a reason why. And
also important to remember, Hoyer was undrafted as well. So
Hoyer's undrafted. He's a true success story. So he's a success story. This is a guy who's started in the NFL, who's won games in the NFL. The problem, though, is which Brian Hoyer are you getting? Because the reality is Brian Hoyer hasn't really played many meaningful snaps since 2017. So that's a very long time. You have no idea if the Brian Hoyer you think you're getting, who would have been someone from back then, the steady, reliable veteran backup, exists anymore. So that is the bit of a crapshoot. Personally, I think the safe bet is Hoyer with a leash, which is, kind of like what happened in that Kansas City game. You bring him out there, and if it's like, oh boy, I don't like this at all, then you move on. Otherwise, I think it's got to be Hoyer over Zappe, even though that's going to disappoint some people.
And I think it's important to remember who Brian Hoyer was throwing to when he last started in that KC game. He was throwing to N'Keal Harry, to Demir Bird, not really guys that, at least in this roster, you have much better talent. You've got a bunch of guys rotating in at receiver because you got a lot of talent there. Obviously, tight end, if Jono misses a lot of time, that's a really big loss. He seemed to be comfortable with Hunter Henry. I thought that, the one throw that he actually attempted to him, the only reason it was inaccurate was because he was about to get hit. So I think there's a lot more talent. The offensive line has been fantastic for the most part. So I think that Hoyer has more to work with. And I also think that there are situations where you would at least trust Brian Hoyer to throw, make the right decision, convert on, the situations where we saw the Patriots run, where normally you would expect them to pass, but I don't think anybody was expecting them to, because this is, again, it's Bailey Zappe, and you got a great offensive line, you got a great backfield. But at least Hoyer gives you the ability to keep the playbook much more open. If you need to start going downfield to catch up or whatever, I'm much more confident in Brian Hoyer than I would be in Bailey Zappe at this point.
All right. You mentioned the offensive line a couple of times here, and I think that's super important to talk about because, again, while I'm not, Mr. Bang the Drum moral victory guy, because I think this was a game you could have won and possibly should have won, given the fact that Green Bay just kind of laid it out there for you, and you didn't. And that's tough because these wins aren't necessarily easy to come by, particularly with a backup quarterback. You still have to look at some of the positives, and that's what we'll look at